Begin the current Daf Masech Yoma Daf Samach Beis. Begin on the bottom of Samach Alpha and Beis. The second one up in the bottom of the Yomid. The Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf regarding the halacha. If the blood spills out in the middle of the Avodah, then we said that when you start over again. The Gemara asked a related question to the halacha. Which corresponds by the Kalzich Nechesko Tent of Daf Chaim, which I'm joining today's Daf. Should be a schus for Tinnik Ben Yehudis. As we said, we're going to finish the fifth parak and begin the sixth parak, Shnei Seiri, which discusses all the laws related to the Seiri Yom Kippurim, which are the peers of the he-goats. One's Lashem, one's Lazazel. Additionally, the Gemara discusses where more than one sar is separated on Yom Kippur, such as if the blood spilled in the middle of the Avodah, what do you do then? We begin the new parak, Shnei Seiri. The Mishnah tells us how to choose them, the peers of the he-goats, regarding separating and designating the two Seirim. So Mekitim, the concept of today's daf are Trumas HaLishka, which is that the Jewish people, everyone would give a matzah shekel, which would then be put into the lishka, to the chamber, and then we take the Trumas, the separations of the lishka, 3 times a year into 3 different boxes. Carbon Tamid is the daily sacrifice, one's burned in the morning, one's burned in the evening. Carbon Musaf on Shabbos or other Yom Tov would be like Rosh Chodesh today, to bring special karbanis. Also would be 2 goats. It would be 2 lambs. Shchutei chutz is the halacha that a person cannot do an avodah, specifically by carbon, shechting it outside of the azar. So we mentioned in the previous daf, which a lot of this mesechta, that avodah Yom Kippurim has to be performed in a specific sequence, specific order. And then we said that the dam is spilled in the middle of the avodah, so a new power, a new sar must be shechted. We said it depends where. According to everyone, if you finish one stage, you could move on to the next stage. But if you were middle, we had a machlekes regarding do you start over. But be that as it may, since a new Sar LaHashem has to be brought in pairs, because that must be done by a girl, so now the question is, we now have several goats designated as a Sar LaZazel. So the Gemara is going to discuss right now, so which one is actually sent away as a Sar LaZazel, right? We said that you had the Sar LaHashem, and you spilled out the blood. Okay, so now you say you have to bring another one. You got to start either over, wherever it is, but you finish, let's say, Kodesh Kodeshim, now you're starting with the Pareiches, you're going to the Mizbeach Hazah, so you bring a new carbon. But every time you bring the Sar LaHashem, you can't just pick one. It has to come the Hagrala. The Torah tells you have to do a lottery, which one is Sar LaHashem, which was Sar LaZazel. But you already had a Sar LaZazel from the first Sar that you brought. So on that's where the Gemara begins, second line up in the bottom of the Amid. He says, Kam Mesir Mishaleach. He says that how many he-goats are you going to send? In other words, if the blood of the he-goat spilled out after you finished it in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then you have to bring another 2 he-goats to make the lottery on them, and then you shech the one that's Lashem, and then you do the matanis on the Pareiches, and again the blood spills out, and again you have to go ahead and bring another 2 he-goats to make the lottery, and then again you shech the one Shalshem, and you bring it blood on the Mizbeach. So you have 3 Seiri Azazel from the 3 peers. How many he-goats are you going to send? The he-goats, Lashem, you had to because the blood kept on spilling out. So you have to bring another one. The question is, what do you do with the other pair of the Sar LaZazel? How many are you sending off the cliff? Right? There's 2 bloods we spoke about inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then the Heichel, there's the par, which is for the Kanim. That's separate. That if it spills out, you just bring one more par. But the Seirim, the Sar LaHashem, you can't just bring a Sar LaHashem. It has to be a pair from the Sar LaZazel. And if you make a lottery, it ends up, whichever one, they pick up the thing and it says, okay, it's on the right side, the left side. But so now you have, every time you burn a new Sar LaHashem, you have another Sar LaZazel. So you have 3 Seir LaZazel over here. How many are you throwing off the cliff? So Amalei, so Nachman responds to Rabbi, he says, what, the Chiedra Mishalech? Do you think that he's going to be throwing off his whole flock? Of course he's not throwing off 3 different he-goats off the cliff. The Torah only required you to throw 1 Lazazel, 1 over the cliff. So Malay said to him, as he continued to have a son of Bezavadab, what, the Chiedri Cyrus? What do you think? Rabbi responds to Rav Nachman. He says, according to your reasoning, that do you think that you burn your whole flock? In other words, you're saying, what, you think you have to throw off your whole flock because you have three animals over here? So, but then say the same logic in our Mishnah. We said that all those that were Lashem, they're all burnt on Beis Hadeshin. Why is it any different over there? Why do you have to burn all those Seir Lashem that you had brought? It's the same thing. You have to burn your whole flock. You have to throw off the whole flock off the cliff. To which Rav Nachman responded, he says, no, me, dummy, is it comparable? Hasam by the Sar LaHashem, like Siv Oisai. Doesn't say the word Oisai. So therefore, yeah, it could be even more than one. Oisai is singular. Here it says l'shalach oisai la'azazel. It says to send it off the cliff. It tells us only one's going to be thrown off the cliff. The other two would not be required. In contrast to, by the Sar Lashem, which each one was, let's say, you needed the dam for the Kodesh HaKadosh, and one needed dam for the Heichel, one needed dam for the Mizbech HaZav. Yes, each one of those are considered part of the Sar Lashems, and you would have to burn it. Now, however, regarding this, that we're saying that only one of the animals are going to be thrown off the cliff, we have a machlekes, which one that is. Itmar, we learned. Rav Papi Mishmei Rav Amar, Rav Papi's version of what Rabbi said was Rishon Mishalech. The first Sar Lazazel is the one you send to throw off the cliff. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg Rav Amar, he had a different version of what Rabbi said. No, Achar Mishalech, the last one, meaning let's say the one that you had paired up for the ones that you needed for Mizbeach Hazav, that's the one that you send off the cliff. So the Gemara says, wait a second. We understand because the Achar Mishalech says the last one we throw off the cliff. So he holds since that's the conclusion of the Talmud. It was the last, we know Hakol Gemara. It's the last one. So therefore, that's the one that you send off the cliff. What does he hold? Why does he say it's the first one? It says the Gemara Sabbalak Rabbi Yisi. Also Rabbi Yisi. The Amar that says mitzvah berishin. The mitzvah is always with the first one. It says Gemara Hi Rabbi Yisi. Which Rabbi Yisi you told me that says the first one? Elam Rabbi Yisi the Kupas. If you think it's Rabbi Yisi that talks about by the boxes of the Trumas Halishka, that now in the Mishnah Masechta Shkolim, that Shalish Kupas, there was 3 boxes. Shalish saw, and each one will contain 3 saw. Shebehem terminus alishka, that they would take off a separation from the chamber, which again, that chamber, they would put in all the shkolim that they brought in other time. And then the treasurer would go ahead and he would take 3 boxes for the truma, and this would be done 3 times a year, to take off a separation of funds, to buy with those funds the karbanis of the tzibur, karban tamid, karban musafin. Now, those 3 boxes, by Yikasablim Aleph Beis Gimel. And it said on there, Amun B'Tachah, no, sorry, it was different Aleph Beis Gimel. It was said Aleph Beis Gimel, and V'tani Lud Nabraisa Rabbi Yisi says Loma Kasav Lein Aleph Beis Gimel. Why did it say on the Aleph Beis Gimel? So that was lay days manitra marishin. It was to know which one you had taken off the separation first. Why do I have to know that? To bring from that box karbanis first, shemitzah berishin, because the mitzvah is with the first one. So you see, Rabbi Yisi's opinion is mitzvah berishin. That's why you would send the first lazazel.
Doesn't it have to match the azazel? Like it has to be identical?
What do you mean? Each pair, when you had Lashem that spilled out the blood, you would bring another pair. Oh, you want? So what do you mean? So what do you mean?
Azazel was not going to match.
Which one? There's 3 Lashems over here. You had one blood that you brought for the what?
But it spilled. So now you do.
But you did it already. Meaning you spilled, but it was after the ones of the pnim. And then you started with the pareiches, and it spilled after you finished with the pareiches. Then you brought another one, you started with the Mizbech Hazav. So each one of the stages had a separate Sal Hashem. So you're not sending off your whole flock, you're not sending all 3 off the cliff, because it says Aisai. See, it has to be one of them. So you're saying it's the first one, because we always, the Iker is the first one. But the Gemara rejects the Raya and says no. Dilma be'inna dis chazoi kamaisa. By that first box, when you took off the Truma, at that moment, it was fit to sacrifice karbanos from that first box. You had shkolim in that first box. At that time, lo yischazoi basraisa. When you were fit to go ahead and bring karbanos from the first box, it wasn't fit yet to bring from the last box because they didn't shovel in the coins yet into the last box. In contrast, like Rashi explains, the higot of the first pair wasn't fit to be sent off the cliff until you finished all the bloods that you were going to bring from the Sar Lashems. And therefore, when you finished, the last one was just as fit as the first one. In other words, it's not a good raya. There, the first box, at that point in time, yes, that was fit to already bring. You didn't get to the third box yet, so therefore the first box came first. But here by the Sar Lazazel, the first one that you separated wasn't really fit first because you couldn't send off the cliff until all the Sar Lashem blood was brought, and that was only till the end, and then you have all these 3 waiting in line. It doesn't have any precedence, it doesn't have any preference, so in other words, to use the first one. So therefore, Elu Rabbi Yisi the Pesach, right? It says Gemara, it's a different Rabbi Yisi, meaning a different source of his teaching of the halachas of Karban Pesach, which the Gersa is a time like Lina Brisa. Hamafresh Pischai. If someone separates a Karban Pesach, and it gets lost. He has this lamb, he's on his way to Yerushalayim, it gets lost. Now he goes and he separates another animal to take its place. And then he finds the first one, which whether it be before Chatzos on the 14th or after Chatzos on Erev Pesach, but be that as it may, both are there. He's ready. He can use either one of them. So say, okay, whichever one you want, you could choose. There's no order in that. He says no mitzvah. The mitzvah is to use the first one, meaning even though the second one that you had separated was before Chatzos, when Chatzos comes, which is Chatzos the time when the Chalos is for the Chiv of Karban Pesach, both of them are fit. You can't sacrifice the Karban Pesach before Chatzos, and at Chatzos they're both the same equal, and still Rabbi is saying that you choose the first one. So therefore you see, and he said, this is if the second one was better than you bring it. But if all things equal, you're going to bring the first one. So you see that even though that it's exactly the case that we're describing over here, that although the Sar Lazazas are both only available to bring at the same time, but the first one is the primary one, and that's why his version was saying that the one Lazal you're going to bring is the first one, whereas the other one said, no, you go to Gemara the Kapar, which is the last one. We shall return to the fifth parak, which again continues to speak about the Dam and the Keteris, and we move on to the sixth parak, Shnei Sirei, which continues on this theme regarding clarifying, which we had spoken about, at least the first part of it. We spoke about the blood of the Sar Hashem, but this has two components, the Seirim, as the Mishnah tells us, Shnei Sirei Yom Kippurim. There's the two he-goats in Yom Kippurim, which one again goes LaShem, one goes LaZazel, the opposite extremes, but mitzvahs and shiur shnei mishavim. The mitzvah is that they should both be the same, which is b'mara in appearance. They should both be white or black or gray, whatever it is, they have to have the same look, claim the same height, they have to cost the same amount, they have to be bought at the same time. Now, however, even if they're not the same, they're going to be valid after the fact. So let's say if you bought one today, you bought one tomorrow, it will be kosher. Now, what happens if one of them die? So it depends. If you didn't do the lottery yet, you bought the two lambs, they look the same, everything the same, but you didn't do the lottery yet. So then, whichever one died, it doesn't make a difference. You don't have anyone to be Lashem Lazazli. We didn't do the lottery yet. So you just get another one for the peer, and that's it. It has to look this, whatever. You try to get everything the same as much as possible, and then you'll do the lottery. But the imishahigulmeis, if it only died after you did the lottery already, so then yavi zug acher. Then you actually have to bring a whole new pair, v'yagral alein betchila, and you have to go and do a whole new lottery on it. And the Yoma you say like this, meaning you say this is not the word you're saying. Im shal shem mes. If the one of Lashem died, then you're going to say this. Zesh alav hagar Lashem. So the one that comes out in the lottery, the second lottery, Lashem, this guy in Tachtav should take the place of the first Lashem. So that's all you're going to say. If Lashem, right, you had two, Lashem Azazel, you did a lottery. If the Lashem died, so when you do this new lottery, you'll say, oh, let the one of this new Lashem take the place of the old Lashem, which passed away. Now, Vimshal Azazel is a separate case now. If the one Lazazel died, so then you'll say, Zesha Allah Hagar Lazazel is Kam Tachtav. Let this new Lazazel take the place of the first one that died. Now, Hasheni, I think Moshe can explain exactly which one is the second one, meaning the second one that's extra. But is it from the second peer or is it from the first peer? The second one, Yirat Sheistaiv, again, you're going to have two of the other type, the one that was alive that didn't die, and now you did a new lottery, you're going to have a double. What do you do with the doubles? Right? You trade in the cards, you have doubles, what do? You need to get a set, right? So what do you do with the second? You're not bringing two of Lazazels. So the second one, Yirat Sheistaiv. You let it graze until it develops a blemish. V'macher, and you sell it, v'yiplu dam nadava, and then its money are used as a nadava when the mizbeach is not being used. Meaning, if let's say the Azazel died, and now you have two Lashems, one's left over from the first pair, one's left over from the second pair, so you're going to get an atonement with one of them, and the second one, which one is that second one? The Gemara is going to explain which one is that second one. The second one is going to be left to graze. Let's say one Lashem dies, and now you have two Lazazel. So one's going to be sent off the cliff, and the other one's going to graze until it develops a blemish. Now, why is the halacha that it's going to be roya, that it's grazes? The reason that is because she'en chatas tzibur meisa. The Tanna Kama holds that a chatas tzibur does not have the halacha of being left to die. Meaning, although we have halacha mishabisina, we know that there's 5 types of chatayis that are left to die. That was only said regarding an individual or a single person, as the Gemara in Hariyas Vav Manaf and Tzmur Vav Manaf explains, because we find that there are 5 types. Now, a vlad chatas, which is the child of a karban chatas, and a temur of a chatas, if you're trying to switch its sanctity to another angle, and chatas shenezim alao, which are 3 of the 5, if you have a chatas that the owner died, they're not applicable by a tzibur, because a tzibur does not have that as in the cave, it does not have that as a temur, because temur can only be by yachad, and obviously cannot be mesub alao because all of Klal Yisrael is not dying. So then, therefore, even the other ones, the other 2, by chatas shekipra ba'alau, if you have a chatas that only got with another one, even though that's possible with a tzibur, but it was only said by yachid because they all have to have the same 5 halacha. They all have the same. All 5 have to have the same halacha. And since 3 out of the 5 cannot be by a tzibur, the other 2 will also not be applicable by a tzibur. So the halacha of kipra ba'alau ba'achar, if you're getting atonement with another one, which is the case that we're having over here, you're getting atonement with another lashem, the remaining one will not be left to die. It will graze until it develops a blemish. Which is Rabbi Yehuda, he disagrees, says no, Thomas, he says it will die. He holds that whatever is applicable, whatever is not, and therefore, Kippur Bala, which could apply to its Sibur, will have the halacha of Achatas Shekipur Baleha, then the other one is left to die, not to graze, but to die. But I remember the additional Yehuda says, which he wasn't explaining exactly what's he coming to add on, as if he's saying, and also, he says, Nishbach Hadam, if the blood that's Lashem, let's say you already slaughtered the animal, and you have the blood, and the blood spills out, then Yoma Hamishtalech. So then the Sar Lazaz has to be left to die, which I already told us this already, that's left to die, because it's the Chatas Shemesuba that Shekipur Bala Ba'achar, because you have to make a whole new pair. He says that you bring 2, and you do a lottery on it, and the Mishtalech is left to die, and Mesa Mishtalech, Yishavech Adam, if let's say the Mishtalech dies, so then you don't have its pair, so then you got to spill out the blood. So it's basically this pair is thrown out, and you do a whole new lottery. And he doesn't hold yira, doesn't hold its grazes, because he holds that it's chatas shekipur bala ba'achar, that you have to let it die. So again, if the azazel dies, you spill out the blood spills, then you wait till the azazel dies. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Now we continue down in Beis, where the Gemara brings the source for the halacha of our Mishnah that the seirim should be alike, according to pasuk in Vayikra. Says Yikach Shnei Seiri Izim. You should take 2 he goats. Now, Miud Seiri Shnai. When you say Seirei, it's plural. So you know that you have to bring 2 he goats. Matamalam Shnei. Why is it Shnei Seiri? 2 of Seirim already said plural. Why would you say 2? I already know the minimum of plurality is 2. So if I don't specify the amount, I know it's going to be 2. Why would you say Shnei? It's Shiur Shnei Mishavim. You're right. The word 2 is to tell you that they should both be the same, so it's a pair of 2. So on that minayin, how do you know they're not that even though they're not the same, like our Mishnah said, that the Yevid Krim, they're going to be kosher. It says in the pasuk, sar riba. It says the word sar more than once to tell you whatever the he-goat is, even if it's not matching with the other one. Then the Gemara says, wait a second, I don't understand. Time of the Rabbi Rahmana, the whole reason why you tell me why it's going to be kosher, but the Yevid if not the same, is because it says the word sar more than one time. Halei Rabbi Rachmana, but if a Torah did not have the word sar more than one time, if it did not have a riba, we have a minim psul. I would have said that actually would be invalid if it doesn't match up. Ikuv min alan. Where do you know that you would tell us that it would be ma'akiv? As Rashi explains, although it says chukah, which chukah always tells us ikuv, but both according to Yehuda and according to the Chem that we mentioned in previous Daf, the word chukah is only on things that are part of the avodah, whether it's only in big deal of lafnai lafnim or big deal of in nasa b'chutz, but not on regarding purchasing something which you did the day before that, which no one would say that has to be equal. Where do you get that idea that the purchasing, which is the fact that they should look the same when you're doing it, that should be an equal? Where does it say that? So says the Gemara that you would have thought to say shnei ksiv. It says 3 times in the Torah the word shnei. To tell you that's ma'akiv. I'm telling you more than one time to tell you it's got to be 2. I know 2. It says seiri. No, 2 means to say they should be the same. So since it repeats itself more than one time, we know that generally the halacha is shanol makazim la'akiv. When the pasuk is repeating something, it's telling you that it's ma'akiv. If I would have said it's ma'akiv. So then the Gemara says, wait a second, the but now that the Torah is including with the word sar more than one time, to tell you that it is going to be kosher with the Evid, if it's not the same, to tell you whatever the higot is, even if it's not matching, then shnei lomali, then what is that coming to teach me? I thought it was coming to teach me to be ma'akiv. Obviously it's not ma'akiv, because it is kosher with the Evid. So why are you saying the word shnei 3 times? Oh, says the Gemara, that actually teaches what we said in the Mishnah. That chad, this shnei is telling us that it's a pair. And what's it appear for? One's lamar, I mean, it has to have the same appearance. One's for the height, and one is for its monetary value. That, yes, like Rashi points out, lamitzma, not la'akiv, but it's teaching me these 3 areas that they should be the same in all these, in its cost, in its height, and its appearance. So that's one shmuz, which is the halacha of our Mishnah. Now the Gemara brings that Tana Mehachi Gabi Kirse Mitzayr. This was just in regarding the 2 siyum we bring on Yom Kippurim. So Lashem, so Lazazel, they should be the same. We know from Shnei. Now, that we know from the word Shnei. Now, similarly, we have regarding the lambs of the Mitzayr. The Mitzayr, so here he would have tzaras. When he finished with his tzaras, when it was gone, so he would shave his body here, and then he would go ahead and bring 2 birds. Then he would count 7 days of purification, and then he would go ahead and shave his ear again. And then on day 8, he would bring these 2 lambs as his karbanos. Now, the pasuk says, Yikach shnei kavasim. He should take 2 lambs. Now, I don't understand. Mid kavasim shnai. Versteht sich that it says that the minimum of lambs is 2. So, what are you saying the word shnei for? It's redundant. So, she shnei mishavim. It's telling you that they should both be the same. How do I know that even if they're not the same, that it would be kosher? Oh, because keves. It says more than one time the word keves in the singular to say, just like before was sar in the singular, to tell you that even if it's by itself, even if it's not matching up with the other one, it'll be valid. So it says the Gemara, the same type of question we said before. So it sounds like time of the Rabbi Nachman, it's only because the Torah is including the word keves, a lamb by itself. But Holy Will be Rahman of the Torah did not have a rebbe. I mean, I would have thought the same psulim is going to be invalid if it doesn't match up. Where'd you get that from? Ikuv Minolan. Why would you say that it's ma'akiv by the 2 lambs that they have to be matching up? It doesn't say anywhere a lashon of ikuva. Says the Gemara, you would have thought to say tiyeksiv. It says in the pasuk zois tia teres hamitzayra, which the word tia is always what's called b'havayasiteh. That this is how it has to be. Whatever's written, it's got to be that way. So therefore, I would have thought to say that it's going to be ma'akiv. Okay, so then the Gemara asks the same question as we said before. So so if the Torahs are including from the word keves, which is singular, even if it's by itself, it's not shnei chavasim, it's not matching up with the other one. That's going to be kosher. So tia lamali. So what is tia coming to teach me? That word seems to indicate a lashon of ikuva, and there's not being ma'akiv. So the Gemara l'shar b'yaseh shel mitzayra. For all the other procedures and processes of the mitzayra, that they are ma'akiv. But regarding the fact that they have to be similar, for that, it's not going to be ma'akiv, because that the Torah has a special ribuy of keves. Fine, that was the second type of shmuz. Now, and the Gira says, V'tani nami gabi mitzayra k'agavna, which, or the Gira adds on the word tzipayr mitzayra k'agavna. Now, as we said in the beginning of his purification process, mitzayra, when he would shave his hair, he would then go ahead and bring 2 birds. Those birds also have a similar type of a discussion as we had regarding his 2 lambs that he brings on day 8, and regarding the 2 he-goats that we bring on Yom Kippurim, same type of a shmuz, which is, the pasuk says, tzipara, birds he has to bring. Now, mi tzipara mishtayim. I know that the minimum of birds in the plural is 2. So on top of the why do you say 2? It's redundant, unnecessary. Oh, shiyishtein Shabbos, that the birds have to be the same, it's got to be a pair. Oh, minayin, how do we know Shabbat Shein Shabbos that even though they're not the same ksheres that they're going to be kosher? It says tzipar in the singular, it says it more than once to tell you that, even if it's by itself, even if it's not matching up with the other bird, it's going to be okay. Okay, then time of the Rabbi Nachman, it sounds like the reason why the Torah is including a riboy from tzipar, even though it's not matching, therefore it's kosher. So you tell me that if there was no riboy, it would be possible. Where do you get this idea from that it's going to be ma'akiv if they're not matching up? Says the Gemara, you would have thought to say tiyeksiv because it says tia by zois tia teres hamitzayra. So therefore tia would be going on this halacha too that the birds have to be matching. Kamash Malon, that you have to tell you that, no, that the word tzipor is going to tell you that's not ma'akev. Okay, says the Gemara, Hashd the Rabbi Rahman the tzipor, but now that you're including from the word tzipor, that it's telling you that even if it's not matching, so tiyul amali. So what does tzipor teach me? So that I already said before, the shah regarding all the other procedures of the mitzvah. So besides for the fact of his 2 lambs and for his 2 birds, that there is not ma'akev, all the other procedures are ma'akev, because here we have special ribuim that tell you that's not ma'akev. But then says the Gemara, okay, fine. You just told me 3 times a similar type of a drasha. You told me by this 2 seed on Yom Kippur. You told me by the 2 lambs that the Mitzvah brings on day 8. And you told me regarding the beginning of his purification process, regarding his 2 birds, that the word shnei tells me that they have to be the same. And then we have a special ribuim to tell me it's not ma'akev. But if that's the case, I can tell you the same shmuz by the daily sacrifices you bring every single day. Namely, you should say like this. It says in the pasuk, kevasim. Kevasim nation, we're learning today, right? This is we'd say regarding the carbon tamid. Say lambs, miyut kevasim shnayim, right? What's the minority? What's the minimum of lambs? Is 2. Matam olam shnayim. What are you saying in the pasuk? You say kevasim b'nei shana shnayim la yom tamid. Say it's shnayim. You already told me kevasim. Why are you saying shnayim? You ever thought about that every time you hear this? It's leining to the shchaydish was a shnayim shengi zu kevasim, right? I'll tell you why. Shiur shnayim shavim. That the 2 lambs that you bring every single day, one in the morning, one in the evening, they should be the same. They should look the same. And then I'll tell you, then how do I know that even if they're not the same, it's going to be kosher? Because because it says in the pasuk, as a keves it's a ribuy where it says it's separately keves by itself. To tell me, but the evidence, if it doesn't match up with the other one, it's going to be kosher. Now, but then the difficulty would be, but that would tell me that as a mitzvah, it would be appropriate to have them both to be the same. But as Rashi says, we don't find it anywhere that it tells us that the carbon tamid of the shachar has to be the same as carbon tamid of Shabbat. Why not? Why don't you have the same shmuz? You told me in the last 3 sources you took up 3/4 of an almond. Why don't you tell me the same thing by carbon tamid? You say it says kavasim, it means 2. Why say shnayim? To tell me that should be the same. Why don't we find anyone saying that? Says the Gemara, no, hahu mebayle. You're right, it's a good diuk, good shaila, but not every shaila could yishpar a halacha. That shnayim you need for something else, the Getan like the Brisa. It says in the pasuk, like you just pointed out, shnayim layoim, 2 for the day. What does that mean, layoim? It means keneged hayoim. It means that it has to face the day. What are we facing the day? We have to face where the sun is shining. Which Taisa points out that really, which Shnayim is not really teaching anything, but Taisa points out why you would need to. But the point is that pasuk is teaching you a different halacha. It's not extra, the word Shnayim. You're right, you're reading it from Kavasim, it's 2. It's not teaching you regarding the amount, it's teaching you that those 2 have to be layoim. They have to face the sun. As the Gemara explains, the Brisa says, do you really say it has to face the sun? Or maybe it's, no, just telling you they have to bring 2 every single day. 2 for the day. Says the Brisa, no, you can't say that. Why? Because when the pasuk already says, as a keves and 1 lamb you should bring in the morning, 1 lamb you should bring in the evening. Already tells us that you're bringing 2. So what am I fulfilling? What is that telling me? When I'm saying you bring 2 a day, I definitely know 1 plus 1. That's like the classic, it's 1 plus 1. Everyone knows that 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening is 2 for the day. So rather, what does it mean? It means keneged hayoim. It has to face the day. That's what Shnayim's come to teach me. Different. That's why I don't have this drush of telling me that the carbon tamid of Shulshach and Shabbat have to look the same and be the same height, because that's not what the word Shnayim. The extra.
You're not facing the day.
What do you mean? No. It has to. We're about to say Ketzad. Look, the Brisa is going to tell me what it means facing the day. Tamid shel shachar, the morning carbon tamid, it was slaughtered al keren tzafaynis marav. It was slaughtered by the northwestern corner of the mizbeach. Meaning, as Rashi explains, the sun rises in the east. Right? We just said in Hal now mimizrach Hashemesh. Right? We say it comes in the east, and therefore the sheikhid would go as much as possible towards the west. Why? Because he wanted to go as far as away from the eastern wall of the Azara, because the walls were very high, and in the morning the sun is very low down in the sky. And Therefore, the shade of the wall is going to be blocking the sun. So therefore, in the morning time, so let's say this is the Mizbeach over here. This is the north, and the other side of the Mizbeach, let's say over here. So this is north, this is west. So we're going to be, the sheikh is going to be over here more towards the west than towards the east. It's on the north of the Mizbeach was where they had these rings in the ground. So as much as possible, they would be towards the west, because then you can get the sun on the animal.
Isn't it supposed to be in the ring?
Yeah, it's going to be in the ring, but even in the rings,
the rings usually have a location. You cannot move that.
Right, so it's going to stay, but there's rings towards the east.
No, but the rings are from each mishmeres, 24 rings.
Right, but when they brought the carbon tamid shel shachar,
they would use another ring.
Mm-hmm. They would use these rings. I'm trying to remember exactly which ones if they used their rings. They had their base khalifas where they kept their knives,
yes.
But they would use
tabato. We know what the bilgo was tabato stimo, but that
right.
means she borrowed the others mishmeres. That means every mishmeres
could be the other rings. Which one is that?
Was 24
the what?
Number 14.
What do they say? Right, but this is what they did in the carbon tamid shel shachar, and maybe the other carbonas they use their own.
Yeah,
but here,
only by the other carbonas.
But the other carbonas.
Not by the carbonas.
Right. So by the carbon tamid they use this ring. Now it was specifically done. And when they say we're going to point out exactly which ring it was, but they specifically did on the west because they wanted the sun to be. That's what it means keneged yom. Now that's why it was by the west of the mizbeach. Right, you see over here, you see there's an eastern corner of the Mizbeach and there's a western corner of the Mizbeach. So they specifically did it by the western corner of the Mizbeach. Because then you could get the sun. Because if you do it by the east, you're not going to get the angle of the sun so much, the wall's going to block it. Now, why does that have to be the northern part of the Mizbeach? Which, those who explain, that's where the rings were. But there's a reason why they were there, and at least that's where they did the carbon tamid, was because Kadshe Kadshim, you had to slaughter on the side of the Mizbeach on the northern part. And yeah, that is where the base of Mitpachaim was, where you had the rings in the ground, where they would put the head of the animal inside of it, where there were 24 rings, like the amount of mishmaros they were, which was an area of 24 amas by 24 amas squared, which had 6 orders of 4 rings going from north to south. So they did it in the northwestern corner, al tabash sheniya. They did it by the second ring, not the one right next to the Mizbeach. So, let's say the one right over here. This is the first ring. This is really the closest ring to the northwestern part. They did it on the second ring. Why did they do it on the second ring? So Rashi actually says that he says he doesn't know why. He says, I heard the reason is because they wanted that the first ring should assist, not like this picture is showing, that it should assist to hold the legs of the animal, that it shouldn't turn around. So you have the neck here, and the legs would be in that first ring, which Rashi points out that the face of the shaychid and the neck of the animal would be on the diagonal, which the Gesayis changed it to that it should be on the southeast. That's from where the sun is coming in the morning. The sun's coming from the southeast, so that's where you would have the animal facing, not the way this picture is showing, but it would face towards the southeast. So it was facing Keneged Hayom, and therefore you had it as much as possible to the west so that you could get the sun in it. This says a different shot, why it's on the second ring. It says they didn't want to have it by the first ring because maybe the animal is going to excrete waste matter, and we don't want it to be right next to the Mizbeach. So they would move it to the second ring. But again, that's why in the morning they would shecht it by the tzfainis maravis on the second ring. Now, v'shal bein arbaim, and the tamid shal bein arbaim, which now the sun's coming from the west because it's setting, so then they would actually pull it as much as possible to the east. So then they did it by it's in the north, because it's the northern part of the Mizbeach, but it's the northeast. Now, here also they did it al tabashniya on the second ring, and they would face the animal towards the southwest at a diagonal, because that's where the sun is coming from then, because it's setting. So that's exactly what Shnaim Leim comes to teach. It should be Keneged Hayom. It should face the sun. That's what it's coming to teach us. And Musaf and Shal Shabbos, which there it also says Shnei Chavasim. Now, why say Shnei Chavasim? But it says Chavasim, which is 2. which we also learned today by the Musafir Shabbos, that says the Gemara, Vade Tzrichim Shiur Shnei Shabbat, most definitely, it has to be two, which Tais and Rashi discuss. Rashi prefers that it means to say that lemitzvah, meaning not la'akif, but the mitzvah is that, the two Musafim of Shabbos should be the same, because what Shnei come and tell you, Shnei Chabasim, B'nei Shana, what Shnei must be telling you that it should be a pair, and therefore they should be the same. But again, regarding the Karmet Tamid, there the Shnaim Layayim is not extra to tell you, it must be similar. That's telling you that the two should be Layayim, should be facing the day, and therefore that's why they would do the Shechita specifically in the area, in the north, but it would be either east or west, depending if it's morning or evening, to get opposite the sun. Now, continuing on this halacha of the two shiur of Yom Kippurim, we're talking about Unna Braisa. Shnei shiur Yom Kippurim, the two he-goats of Yom Kippurim, which is important that from the moment that you purchase them, they're already holy, because they're coming from the Trumas Halishka, and those funds are holy. So what happens if sheshachtan b'chutz? If, let's say, we're slaughtered out of the azar. So we know this halacha of shchutei chutz. You're not supposed to slaughter a carbon out of the azar. So here it actually depends. Actually, higru lalehen, if you didn't do the lottery on it yet, s'chayv ashal shnehem, you can be liable on both them for shchutei chutz. Now, the Gemara later on is going to ask that, I don't understand, before you do the lottery, the whole halacha of shchutei chutz is only if something is roy lova b'fnim. If it's fit to be done inside, it's a carbon, you didn't do it inside, you did it outside, then the Torah says you can be chayav for slaughtering outside. So now the Gemara is going to ask, I don't understand, before the lottery, what's any of them fit to be done inside the Azara that you can't do it before the lottery, you don't know which is which. And since it's not fit, so why you'd be chayav? Because like we said, it has to be fit to be brought to Pesach al-Moed, like it says in Mikut Zayin, but Shchutei Chutz, about Pesach al-Moed lo hevi. You didn't bring it to Pesach al-Moed, you did it outside, so you're going to be chayav. But here, if you didn't do the lottery, how you can be chayav? It's not fit to be brought as a carbon yet. So it's not that you didn't bring Pesach al-Moed. But be that it may says the Brisa that if you didn't do the lottery, you can be chayav on both. Mishreikul alein, if you did the lottery on both of them, meaning you know which one's Lashem, which one's Lasazel, then chayav al Shem. If you slaughtered the one Lashem outside, you can be chayav, because that's a bona fide carbon that you're supposed to slaughter inside the Azar. But a potter al Shalazazel, we're going to be potter on Shalazazel because that's not fit to be sacrificed inside. It's not Mel Pesach al Moed lo Yeviyoi. It's not supposed to be brought into the Pesach al Moed. It's supposed to be thrown up the cliff. So for that, you're not going to be chayiv for shechting it out of the Azar. So now the Gemara asks, as we had said before, you said actually higul lim chayiv al shashneim. If you didn't do the lottery yet, so you can be chayiv on both of them. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. L'may chazal. What's a fit? None of them are Sar Lashem. So because you didn't do the lottery yet. So why would you be chayiv on any of them? To say that you can be chayiv on both of them. So Rav Chizki says, because hayil v'ro l'sar hanasa b'chutz. Each one of those seirim, it would be fit if let's say you didn't do a lottery and you took that he-goat and you decided to bring it as the chatas of the Musaf and Yom Kippurim, a different side that's brought in Yom Kippurim. The Musafim were done outside in the Azar. The blood wasn't brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is said in Parashat Pinchas. If you decided to use one of those sarim for the Musafim, which you could, you didn't do any lottery yet, you didn't do anything, you just bought two matching he-goats. If you decided to use one of them for the sar of the Musafim, you'd be good. So it's a carbon. Each one of them could have been that carbon. So you can be chayiv on each one of them for shchutei chutz, for slaughtering out of the Azar. Now, says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why are you telling me that, you're not going to be chayiv on it as the sar which is done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Because for that you tell me it's not fit yet. And that was the basis of the Gemara's question. Because the Mechasa HaGrala, you didn't do a lottery yet. If you didn't do a lottery yet, so then it's not fit for Sar Hanas B'fnim. So therefore you're not going to be chayiv, like the Gemara's question was on any one of them, if that was the source of the halacha. We said, you're right, it's not for that. It's the Sar of the Chatas of the Musaf, which doesn't need any lottery. The problem is, but then your teretz also then doesn't work, says the Gemara. L'sar Hanas B'chutz Nami L'chazi, that's not true. You're not fit either for the Sar that's done of the Musafim in the Azara, meaning not in the Heichel, because the Machas Avodas Hayoim. You're missing all the Avodas Hayoim of the Matan Dam, of the Par and the Sar, and the Chafin and Secretarius and the Ketara, which all have to be before the Musafim. You're telling me in this whole Masechta that the Avodas Hayoim has a specific order, and if you do it out of order, then it's not going to be valid. So then, How are you telling me that you're going to be chayiv for slaughtering it outside because you can bring it as the sar of the Mesafim, but it's not fit for that yet? And just like you asking, you understood very well that it's not going to be chayiv because it could have been as the sar hanasa b'fnim, as the sar lashem, because you didn't do the hagrol, you didn't do the lottery yet. So why is your answer any better? It's also not fit yet for this because you didn't do all the other avodas yet that's supposed to come before it. So says the Gemara, Rav Chizda holds that ein mechuzas man l'boy bayern. That no, there's no halacha of mechuzas man for that same day. Meaning, regarding the sar hachitzai, regarding the sar of that for the Mesafim, you're not missing anything in the body of the animal itself. It's just it's lacking time. It didn't reach the time yet for being the Mesafim. But if it's going to be fit that day, the time has not yet come. That's not considered as a chasar zman. In contrast to the lottery, even though it's not an action, it's not something in the body of the animal itself, because actually the Gemara had told us that actually taking out the lottery from the box is ma'akiv, but putting it on the animal is not ma'akiv. So it has nothing to do with the body of the animal. Even so, but since it's a mitzvah that says with the animal itself, it's in the animal, it's not just something else extrinsic to it, external to it. But it's something that's integral for it to decide which one it is by doing the lottery on it. So that's considered as like mechus ma'isa, as if it's missing an action. And therefore, regarding the sar hanas b'fnim, we said that for that, you're right, you wouldn't be chayiv for shechting any one of these two higos out of the azar. But regarding saying that it's fit, that it could have been for sar hanas b'chutz for the sar of the Mesafim, that is fit. The time didn't yet reach because you didn't do all the other things. That's not considered. That wouldn't disqualify it on the day that it becomes fit, even though we have to wait a while. That wouldn't be considered as a problem. But that of the sar hanas b'fnim, that would be considered as a mechus ma'isa because of the fact that you didn't have the lottery yet. That makes a mechus ma'isa. That's different than the case of the sar hanas b'chutz. Now, based on this, Ravina, the Gemara takes it one step further. He says, Hashdam Rav Chizda. Now that Rav Chizda says, Mechus hagrola ke mechus ma'isa dami, he says that even though it's not an action in the body of the animal itself, but you said that if not for the fact that these two siyum would be fit to be brought as a higot of the Mesafim, that then you would not be chayiv on floating them outside because of the fact that it's not roy b'fnim. Why is it not roy b'fnim? Because the lottery is ma'akir. It's telling us that it's like mechus ma'isa, if you didn't do something for the animal to be ready. So it's not fit inside. Then hadam Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul. Shlamim sheshachnu kodim sheniftuchu dalsas ha'heichel psulim. If you shechter carbon shlamim before the gates of the heichel have been opened, that shlam is going to be invalid. Like it says above yikur shchatei pesach al mayid, that you should slaughter it by the opening of the Yomah. It doesn't mean you have to literally slaughter by the opening of the Yomah. It means bisman shu b'suach means when it's open. Bisman shu no, not when it's closed. So then as you get into samach gimel and aleph and shchatan b'chutz, if you slaughtered out of the azara, kodim sheniftuchu dalsas ha'heichel, before the doors were open, then part you're going to be exempt from the halacha of shchut dechutz. Might have what's the reason? I'll tell you why. B'chusar b'sicha, lacking the doors open is kemechus ma'isa dami. It's like lacking an action of its viability. Meaning, even though it's not something in the body of the animal itself, but since it says it regarding this animal, it's not something secondary that's going to cause a ripple effect. It said regarding this animal, this shlam cannot be. That has to be when the doors are open and the doors are closed, so it's not viable. So that's like a ma'isa b'gufa, like where Rav Chizda said, and therefore if you shecht it outside, you're not going to be chayiv, just like by the hagrala, where you have to do the lottery on the animal. We said if you don't, it's like mechus ma'isa, and hence we said it's not really fit to be brought inside, and therefore if you would do it outside the two higots, you would not be chayiv on any of them. So that's why we had asked the question. We said you're right for different reasons, because it could be as a sar hanasa b'chutz, meaning of the sar masaf was done nazar and not in the heichel. Therefore, you could compare the two halachas, and you could say that the same thing would apply to the halacha of shlamim that was shechted b'chutz before the doors were opened. Is the same mechutz ma'isa, and hence you would not be chayiv for shchut dechutz because it's not yet fit inside to say you be chayiv to do it outside. Thank you to any time for hosting this.